The series begins with a strange girl named Wednesday Addams. Despite her young age, the little girl displays few emotions and has an odd obsession with death. She is also known for wearing black and white gothic clothing, which everyone finds odd. Wednesday arrives at her high school with a creepy expression on her face in the first scene. Pugsley, her brother, is bound inside her locker with an apple in his mouth. As she shoves him out, Wednesday has a vision of the person who tortured her brother. We learn here that she is not a typical child. Wednesday has the ability to see someone's past and future simply by touching them. She walks into the swimming room with 2 bags full of piranhas after discovering that a group of bullies from the swim team is behind this. Then she casually lets the bloodthirsty piranhas loose in the pool. As the bullies flee in terror, Wednesday declares that nobody picks on her brother except her. In the next scene, we meet Wednesday's parents, Morticia and Gomez. They've had enough of their daughter's antics and have decided to send her to the prestigious Nevermore Academy. All of the students at this academy have supernatural abilities, and they are taught how to control them. Morticia and Gomez are both graduates of the same academy, implying that they, too, have superpowers. Meanwhile, a hiker sets out on his own through the woods near Nevermore Academy. Unfortunately, an unknown creature attacks him and kills him after only a few minutes. Later, the local sheriff discovers the mutilated body and begins surveying the area. Surprisingly, we learn that this heinous murder isn't the first of its kind. In fact, there have been a number of similar incidents in recent years. Wednesday then arrives at the academy and meets Principal Larissa Weems, who runs Nevermore with ease. She introduces her to her roommate, Enid, a werewolf who is in every way the polar opposite of Wednesday. Enid is a laid-back girl with brightly colored decorations on her side of the room, whereas Wednesday is obsessed with all things black and goth. Later, Enid takes Wednesday on a tour of the academy, pointing out the 4 major school groups: Fangs, Furs, Stoners, and Scales. Fangs are vampires, Furs are werewolves, Stoners are gorgons with snakes on their heads, and Scales are manipulative sirens. Enid also shows her the most popular girl in school, Bianca Barkley, a stunning siren, and her ex-boyfriend Xavier Thorpe, a death artist who can make his drawings come true. Meanwhile, as the Addams family drives away, Gomez releases Thing, a severed, living hand. Thing is in charge of keeping an eye on their daughter. Wednesday attends fencing class the next day, where she is pitted against the formidable Bianca. After some back and forth, the girls find themselves with equal points and decide to remove their masks and fight until someone draws blood first. A brutal battle soon ensues, with both of them matching each other stride for stride. However, in the end, Bianca triumphs when she slashes a small cut on Wednesday's cheek. Later, as Wednesday emerges from the infirmary after being bandaged, she is nearly crushed to death by a falling stone gargoyle. Fortunately, Xavier, the death artist, arrives just in time and pushes her out of the way. Wednesday returns to her room shortly after, but she suspects that someone is watching her. As a result, she searches the room and eventually finds Thing's hand. Wednesday, realizing it is her parents' fault, threatens the hand to be loyal to her or she will lock him in a drawer. Thing, terrified, vows to be faithful. She is required to attend mandatory therapy sessions as a result of Wednesday's piranha prank. As a result, Larissa, her principal, drives her to her therapy session in Jericho, a small town outside of Nevermore. She meets with her therapist but does not discuss anything. Wednesday, on the other hand, has another plan. She excuses herself to use the restroom before fleeing through the window. She accidentally runs into a man outside. She has a vision in which she witnesses the man's death. Wednesday, terrified, goes to a nearby coffee shop. There, she meets Tyler, the sheriff's son and a barista. Tyler is having some mechanical issues with his espresso machine. The instructions are inexplicably in Italian, but Wednesday, thankfully, can read Italian. She quickly fixes the device and requests a ride to the nearest bus stop. But before Tyler can respond, a trio of bullies dressed as pilgrims storm the store and taunt her. Wednesday tries to ignore them, but when she has had enough, she fights back and easily smacks them down. Principal Larissa arrives at the store with the sheriff after a while and notices the carnage. She lashes out at Wednesday before driving her out of town. They pass a terrible car wreck on their way to the academy. The victim is the same man Wednesday saw earlier in her vision. Later that night, in the dorm balcony, she plays a haunting song on her cello. It's a full moon night, and you can hear several werewolves howling in the distance. Enid, who is a werewolf herself, reveals that she will not join them because she cannot transform. Meanwhile, Thing enters Tyler's room and requests that he call Wednesday. Despite his fear, he agrees and the two begin video chatting. Wednesday invites Tyler to meet her at the harvest fair the next day, claiming that it will be enjoyable. In reality, she just wants to get out of the academy. While at the fair, we notice Larissa keeping a close eye on Wednesday. Despite this, the goth team manages to catch up to Tyler. The two are almost out of there when Wednesday runs into one of her classmates, Rowan. He flees into the woods, and she has a vision that Rowan has been brutally mauled to death by someone since Wednesday touched him. Terrified, she changes her mind and pursues him to inform him of the news. Rowan uses his telekinesis ability to secure her high up on a tree before she can say anything. He then reveals that 25 years ago, his mother, a powerful seer, predicted Wednesday destroying the Nevermore Academy. As a result, Rowan believes he must kill her before anything bad happens. He then begins telekinetically choking her, but then a massive monster leaps in, tears Rowan apart, and vanishes into thin air. Wednesday stands over his mutilated body, looking at the alleged drawing of his mother. Soon after, police officers led by the sheriff begin searching for Rowan's body, but they are unsuccessful. The sheriff, as expected, does not believe Wednesday's claim of a monster attacking Rowan and believes it was a Nevermore student. An officer interrupts their conversation, and we see Rowan, who is still alive. Wednesday enters her room to find her roommate, Enid, preoccupied with the Poke-Up competition, an annual boat riding game. Later, she attempts to speak with Rowan, but Principal Larissa informs her that he has been expelled for reasons she cannot disclose. As a result, Wednesday goes back to Plan B and requests that Thing keep an eye on Rowan. The scene then shifts to Rowan, who has arrived at the train station, followed closely by Thing. After observing his surroundings, he sneaks into the restroom and disguises himself as an elderly man. Thing, however, loses track of him and misses the transformation. Later, the old man's name is changed to Larissa, the principal. This reveals that she is a shapeshifter, and she is covering up Rowan's murder for some reason. With no other options, Wednesday goes into the woods to look for evidence of Rowan's murder. Tyler, who is stalking his father, is accompanying her. She eventually finds Rowan's glasses, and as she picks them up, she has a vision. She sees a purple book in the vision, from which Rowan got the drawing. Wednesday wastes no time confronting her class teacher about the book, and the latter reveals that it belonged to an old student society known as the Nightshades. However, the society has long since been disbanded. Wednesday sneaks into Rowan's room after school to look for the book. She discovers a mask beneath his bed, but Xavier arrives before she can leave. He is Rowan's roommate, it turns out. Wednesday quickly hides under the bed, just as Bianca arrives to see her ex. She overhears their conversation and discovers that Bianca intends to humiliate Enid in the upcoming boat riding competition. As a result, as soon as she returns to her room, Wednesday decides to assist Enid by entering the competition so that they can defeat Bianca. Wednesday and Enid prepare for the competition the next day. Because there are no rules, everything is fair game, which Bianca is taking advantage of. The game consists of 4 teams rowing their boats to a destination and returning. The winner is the first person to cross the finish line without being knocked out in the lake. As the competition begins, Bianca teases one of her friends about sabotaging the other boats. The friend, who turns out to be a mermaid, dives into the lake and destroys one of the boats, effectively knocking out the team. Fortunately, Wednesday and Enid are prepared, and with Thing's assistance, they manage to capture the mermaid. Wednesday, on the other hand, has a different vision during the competition. This time, she sees a blonde-haired version of herself, who informs her that she is the key. Wednesday regains consciousness, only to discover that Bianca's team has taken the lead in the race. She and Enid, unable to give up, decide to play dirty. They use Bianca's dirty tricks against her and eventually win the competition. For the first time in 4 decades, a non-siren team has won the prestigious competition. Later, Principal Larissa honors the winning team by handing Enid the Poke-Up trophy. Wednesday, however, is overwhelmed by the attention and seeks refuge with Edgar Allan Poe, a former student of the Nevermore Academy. She notices a symbol beneath the stone book he's holding. It's the same symbol Rowan had carved in the picture he'd given her before he was mauled to death. Wednesday solves a series of riddles etched in the book quickly and discovers a clue, that is, snapping twice. When she snaps twice, a secret corridor suddenly opens, revealing a hidden chamber. Wednesday successfully locates Rowan's book, from which he tore the picture. She stuffs the book into her backpack, but before she can go any further, a black sack is thrust over her head. When the sack is removed, she is surrounded by Bianca, Xavier, and a few other students who are members of the Nightshades Club. Although the group had previously been disbanded, Principal Larissa secretly reinstated it. Xavier invites Wednesday to join their group, but she declines and walks away. In the following scene, Principal Larissa announces the annual outreach day, during which the Nevermore students will have to interact with normal people, also known as normies, by working alongside them at their businesses. Wednesday informs Xavier that his roommate may have been murdered once they arrive in town. Rowan is not dead, according to the latter, because he was only expelled. Despite this, Wednesday shows him Rowan's mother's drawing. Xavier examines it closely and discovers that the man in the picture is the founder of Jericho, Joseph Crackstone. Wednesday later decides to volunteer in Pilgrim World, the location where Jericho's history is kept. Eugene, a young boy she befriended in the beekeeping club, meets her there. The two begin talking right away and begin observing their surroundings. Miss Arlene, the Pilgrim World's caretaker, approaches the students soon after. She gives them a tour and tells them about some of Joseph Crackstone's most prized possessions. Wednesday inquires further about the artifacts and discovers that they contain original farm tools, tableware, and even the family chamber pot. She wants to work there but is unable to due to renovations. Instead, they'll all be working at the Ye Olde Fudgery, distributing fudge and cakes to local tourists. Later, Wednesday sneaks into the Crackstone family chamber with the help of Eugene. She discovers a painting of the old meeting house that depicts the girl from her vision. Soon after, she discovers the book that the girl was carrying. When Wednesday notices the pages are blank, she suspects it is a forgery. Arlene, the caretaker, arrives and catches her. When Wednesday inquires about the original book, Arlene reluctantly admits that it was stolen last month. Tyler and Wednesday later reunite at the coffee shop. Tyler reveals that what is left of the original meeting house is out in the woods when the latter inquires about Joseph Crackstone. It is essentially a ruin, and meth heads use it as a crash pad. Wednesday and Thing rush into the woods in search of Joseph Crackstone's home. When they find it, they come across a homeless man, but Thing chokes him and scares him away. Wednesday has a vision all of a sudden. She travels 400 years in the past this time. We see the blonde girl she met in her previous vision. Villagers are encircling the girl, referring to her as the devil's spawn. Soon after, Joseph Crackstone emerges from the crowd and addresses her as Goody Adams. He accuses her of witchcraft and sentences her to death in a barn with other accused people, including her mother. Goody, in turn, accuses them of stealing their land, slaughtering the innocent, and stealing their peaceful spirit. Enraged, Joseph stares at her for a while before setting fire to the barn. Goody tries to free her mother, but her efforts are futile. Finally, when there is no hope left, she escapes through a trap door. Meanwhile, Wednesday is watching everything with them in the barn. Goody soon approaches her and declares that Joseph will not stop his crusade until he has killed them all. With this realization, Wednesday awakens from her long vision and tells Thing everything. They are startled to see the same monster that killed Rowan lurking behind them. Wednesday chases it down in the rain but is unable to keep up. As a result, she follows the footprints, which strangely begin to resemble human footprints. This reveals the monster's true identity as a human. She then runs into Xavier and tells him what she witnessed. He wants to examine the tracks, but the rain has washed them away. The next day, everyone gathers in the town square for the unveiling of a new statue honoring Joseph Crackstone. While the mayor and Larissa announce the statue, Wednesday plays an instrumental version of Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop with the Jericho Marching Band. However, disaster strikes when Thing, in accordance with Wednesday's orders, sets fire to the statue. While others flee in terror, Wednesday's eyes gleam with vengeance as she plays the cello quickly. Later, Principal Larissa rips into Wednesday, suspecting she is to blame for the incident. However, the adolescent denies any wrongdoing and instead confronts Larissa for refusing to acknowledge the bloody, racist truths upon which Jericho was built. That night, the monster attacks the homeless man from earlier, and his camera begins recording the incident. The sheriff and his team arrive at the forest ruins and discover the homeless man dead. They discover footage on his camera that may reveal the identity of the perpetrator. After developing the photos, the sheriff examines the killer's face, which resembles a monster from a nightmare. On the other hand, Wednesday and Thing are stopping by the Jericho coroner's office. Wednesday hopes to examine the homeless man's body further for potentially life-changing clues. She takes careful notes as she examines the corpse. When the sheriff and the coroner appear unexpectedly in the office, Wednesday flees. The sheriff and the coroner talk about the case, and the coroner shows him the severed foot of the homeless man. It lacks 2 toes. After the sheriff leaves, the coroner notices one of the mortuary shelf doors is cracked open. He discovers Wednesday within, but the goth teen is an expert at impersonating a corpse. As a result, he has no reason to suspect anything. the action shifts to Miss Thornhill's class, where everyone is excited for the upcoming Raven dance. Xavier informs our protagonist, but she would rather stick needles in her eyes. She later snoops around Xavier's mysterious art studio and discovers a slew of sketches that resemble the monster. She grabs a few drawings and flees, only to be met outside by the artist himself. Thankfully, he isn't suspicious and instead wonders if she might invite him to the Raven dance. Wednesday asks Xavier to accompany her to the dance in order to conceal her breaking into his studio. He agrees. Wednesday then goes to the sheriff with Xavier's drawings. The sheriff displays one sketch alongside the photo he discovered on the homeless man's camera roll. It's a tie. The sheriff reluctantly agrees to collaborate with her if she brings substantial evidence. She does, however, suspect Xavier. After all, he is capable of bringing artwork to life. Meanwhile, Enid meets Lucas at a coffee shop. Lucas is the mayor's son and a tyrant. He invites Enid to the Raven, which she gladly accepts. Wednesday meets Tyler, who shows romantic interest in her. He wishes to accompany her to the dance. Wednesday, on the other hand, claims she must prioritize, hurting Tyler's feelings. Wednesday then joins Eugene at the beekeeping club. Eugene appears to recognize the cave in the drawing when she shows him the sketches. He then takes her to a nearby cave, claiming to have discovered it while out researching bees. They discover a claw lodged in the cave wall. Wednesday then returns to Xavier's art studio in search of evidence containing DNA that matches the claw. She discovers a bloody rag and stuffs it into her bag. Xavier suddenly catches her red-handed. He realizes she had a reason for inviting him to the dance. Wednesday wonders if he is the monster. Xavier explains that this creature had been haunting his dreams for a while, so he drew a sketch of it. Unfortunately, the beast awoke and scratched Xavier's neck with its claws. Xavier angrily kicks Wednesday out after realizing she had duped him. Later, our goth girl places the claw and bloody rag on the sheriff's desk. She then instructs him to conduct tests on them. Meanwhile, Thing secretly types a note on Wednesday's typewriter and delivers it to Tyler at the coffee shop. It's Raven dance party time. While other students dress up for the event, Wednesday plans to do cave research with Eugene. Tyler unexpectedly knocks on her door with a bouquet. Thing, it turns out, wrote a heartfelt apology for Tyler, luring him to the dance on Wednesday. He also obtained a stunning black gown. Wednesday is initially irritated with Thing for acting without her knowledge. All is forgiven, however, when she sees the stunning gown. Tyler is smitten when he sees our heroine dressed in that gown. Unfortunately, Eugene is taken aback by Wednesday's sudden change of plans. She assures him that the investigation will resume the next day. She also advises him not to venture into the woods alone. However, he defies her order and sets out on his own quest. On the dance floor, everyone is taken aback by Wednesday's stunning gown. Xavier can't keep his feelings for her to himself, so he approaches her. He finally tells her about his ongoing feud with the sheriff's son. Wednesday then informs Tyler of her conversation with Xavier. Tyler used to hang out with the bullies, we learn. During last year's outreach day, they destroyed Xavier's wall painting and assaulted him. Tyler explains that he is no longer that person. Wednesday doesn't hold it against him, claiming she would have gone further. Meanwhile, we see Lucas texting his friends, who intend to exact vengeance on the outcasts for the burning of the Joseph Crackstone statue. Wednesday then surprises everyone by performing her exceptional goth dance steps on the floor. Eugene has returned to the cave site in the woods. He watches as someone sets it on fire. Back at the dance, Lucas and the bullies turn on the sprinklers, squirting red liquid everywhere. The dance floor is now completely covered in red paint. Everyone screams and tries to run, but they just keep falling down. Wednesday is struck by a vision of a terrified Eugene and his death. She makes a beeline for the woods to find him. Meanwhile, after hearing the monster's snarls, Eugene attempts to flee. Wednesday cries out for him, but he does not respond. Unfortunately, Eugene is attacked by the creature before she can reach him. Eugene is covered in blood from head to toe when she finds him. Miss Thornhill, the class teacher, also arrives and inquires if he is still alive. Wednesday is seen flipping through her father's police file in the following scene. We travel back 32 years to a stormy night when Larissa discovers a dead body in the Nevermore courtyard. Young Gomez stands on scaffolding with a sword in his hand. He's drenched in blood. We see the cops arresting Gomez while young Morticia confesses that she's never been more in love with him than when he's handcuffed for murder. We've arrived in the present day for Nevermore's Parents' Weekend. As usual, Gomez, Morticia, Pugsley, and Lurch arrive in style. Principal Larissa addresses all of the visiting families and students. Enid bemoans the arrival of her werewolf family. Enid's mother, predictably, criticizes her daughter for not developing her lycanthrope abilities. Meanwhile, Morticia and Gomez confront their child about her time at Nevermore. Gabrielle, Bianca's mother, also makes an appearance at the event. Later, Morticia reads Larissa's yearbook and reflects on happy memories. She recalls Larissa and Morticia performing for the talent show, and Larissa's Judy Garland impersonation was perfect. Principal Larissa informs the Addams family that the therapist wants them to attend a group session on Wednesday. The Addams agree to undergo psychotherapy. Meanwhile, Sheriff Galpin is on the phone at the coffee shop, inquiring about the monster's claw DNA test. He notices the Addams family's sleek black car approaching. The sheriff then receives a call about Dr. Anwar, the medical examiner who committed suicide. The Addams family then gathers with Dr. Valerie Kinbot for a group chat. Pugsley, like Gomez and Morticia, admits to missing his sister. But Wednesday is in for a surprise. She pulls out her father's police file and demands to know who Garrett Gates is and why Gomez murdered him. Morticia, enraged, chastises her daughter for looking up this information now. The charges against Gomez were dropped because the case was old. Morticia storms out, enraged. Wednesday then informs her mother that she intends to investigate whether the latter supports her. Meanwhile, Bianca meets Gabrielle at the coffee shop, where she reveals the true reason for her visit. Gabrielle is the leader of the Morning Song cult, in which she manipulates people for money. Her siren song, however, is fading. She married Gideon, a guy Bianca despises, and they both hope Bianca, who changed her name when she arrived at Nevermore, will return soon. Otherwise, Gabrielle must reveal that Bianca cheated her way into the academy. Wednesday pays a visit to Eugene in the hospital in the following scene. The poor boy is in a coma in the intensive care unit. Our goth girl blames herself for the monster's attack on Eugene. Eugene's mothers pay a visit, and they thank Wednesday for her friendship because Eugene has never had one. Elsewhere, the sheriff visits the morgue to assess the situation. Dr. Anwar left a note before committing suicide, expressing regret for forging documents in a murder case from 3 decades ago. Unfortunately, someone smeared black gum on the camera, so the police won't be able to determine what happened to Dr. Anwar. The sheriff believes the late coroner regretted manipulating the Gomez-Addams/Garrett Gates case. He needs to imprison Gomez now that he has the evidence. Wednesday then stands by as Morticia places a red rose on Garrett's grave. Sheriff Galpin storms in to arrest Gomez while everyone is feasting in the school courtyard for the festivities. The Addams family is stunned as Gomez is handcuffed and led away. Later, Wednesday and Thing pay a visit to her father in prison. She is determined to learn the truth. He reveals that Garrett developed an obsession with Morticia, was even stalking her. Morticia called the cops, but to no avail. Finally, Gomez subdued an enraged Garrett. Wednesday is no longer convinced that her father is guilty after hearing his story. Meanwhile, Enid's mother hands her brochures for a summer camp for lycanthrope conversion. The camp is intended for Enid to forcefully transform her into a werewolf, as she has not yet become one. Enid, predictably, objects. When Wednesday visits Morticia, we see her standing in the Nightshade's meeting place. Morticia reveals the truth about what happened that fateful night. Morticia noticed Garrett foaming at the mouth in rage while Gomez was attempting to defend himself. She stabbed him because she had no other option. Gomez grabbed the sword and urged Morticia to hide in her room after his body fell onto the courtyard below and was discovered by Larissa. As it turns out, Gomez was to blame for Morticia. Wednesday wonders if Garrett was afflicted after hearing that he was foaming at the mouth. Morticia follows in her daughter's footsteps. As a result, the two set out on a trip to the Jericho Cemetery. Wednesday digs up Garrett's grave for evidence, but they are apprehended by cops and arrested. We see them being thrown into the same cell as Gomez. Fortunately, Wednesday was able to retrieve something from the grave and show it to her parents, its blue-tinged finger, the color of Nightshade. They realize that when Morticia stabbed Garrett, he was already dead. He was poisoned by Nightshade. Wednesday suddenly has a vision. Garrett's father orders Garrett to poison everyone at Nevermore with Nightshade in the vision. A vial of poison is seen passing between the two. According to Wednesday, the vial broke in Garrett's pocket, poisoning him. Following their release, our mother-daughter team makes their case to Mayor Walker. Morticia accuses him of attempting to save his own skin. Walker did nothing when she told him about Garrett stalking her while he was sheriff. He attempted to conceal the facts of the case. Wednesday then displays Garrett's Nightshade finger to him. Morticia orders Walker to release her husband or she will expose him for the liar he is. Fortunately, he agrees. As a result, all charges against Gomez are dropped for the second time. Sheriff Galpin even apologizes to Gomez and shakes his hand. Meanwhile, Enid stands up to her mother and orders her to accept her for who she is. She'll transform into a werewolf when the time comes. Wednesday bids her family farewell at the end of parent-teacher weekend. Wednesday confronts her principal later, after looking through Larissa's yearbook. Larissa did more than just impersonate Judy Garland for Nevermore's talent show, she became Judy Garland. This implies that Wednesday has discovered the truth about their principal. She is a shapeshifter. She disguised herself as Rowan the day after his murder to convince everyone that nothing was wrong. Larissa claims she did everything she could to keep the school out of the spotlight. Wednesday inquires about Eugene's protection from the shape-shifting principal. Larissa and Wednesday are startled to hear clamoring and shouting outside. On the school lawn, they discover the message "Fire will rain" written in fire. Wednesday then performs a ritual to contact her ancestor, Goody Adams. She hopes that her ancestor will assist her in mastering her psychic abilities. Enid interrupts Wednesday's concentration. While the two are talking, a mysterious figure slips a note card beneath their door. Wednesday must go to Joseph Crackstone's crypt at midnight if she wants answers. Wednesday is accompanied by Enid to the crypt, which turns out to be a birthday surprise party for our goth heroine. She notices the writing on the old fireplace is the same as the writings burned on the school's lawn as they sing her happy birthday. She has a vision of Goody warning her about Crackstone's impending visit. Goody can't help her hone her psychic abilities, but she can point Wednesday in the right direction. The latter must investigate the dilapidated mansion that stands before them. It contains the answers she is looking for. In other news, Principal Larissa pays a visit to the mayor and requests his assistance in locating the delinquents who left the burning message at her school. The mayor is happy to oblige and also informs her that they are working to find the perpetrator of the recent attacks. Back at the academy, Xavier stands beside Wednesday as she investigates the "Fire will rain" message on the school lawn. Xavier investigates Wednesday's vision in the crypt. She refuses to reveal any information because she still considers him a suspect in the ongoing investigation. Wednesday later pays a visit to Eugene, who is still in a coma. Dr. Valerie Kinbot walks into the room carrying flowers. Eugene's mothers requested that the doctor check on him when they returned home for a few days. She tries to approach Wednesday, but she isn't looking for a free session, so she exits the room. Meanwhile, the mayor's investigation continues. He receives the death certificate for Garrett's sister, who allegedly drowned while traveling abroad. He is suspicious of her death and wants to know if it has anything to do with the recent attacks. Wednesday pays a visit to Tyler, who wants to take her out on a date for her birthday. But, as is customary, she gives him the cold shoulder. Wednesday informs the sheriff about what she discovered in Crackstone's crypt. But he basically tells her to stop looking into the case. Later, Wednesday and Thing pay a visit to Xavier's art studio. She shows him a drawing she made of the eerie gated mansion from her vision. Xavier pulls out the drawing he made of the same location, revealing that he has been having strange dreams again. The Gates family used to own the gated mansion. Wednesday goes to the mansion the next morning and sees the mayor leave. After overhearing his voicemail to the sheriff, she and Thing pile into the back of his car. He believes he has figured out who is behind the attacks and requests a meeting with the sheriff at the cafe. He drives to the cafe, oblivious to the fact that Wednesday and Thing are hiding behind him. A blue Cadillac hits the mayor as he crosses the street to meet with the sheriff when they arrive in town. Following the incident, the sheriff records a statement from Wednesday, who claims she crawled into Walker's car to learn more about what he discovered at the Gates mansion. When Wednesday returns to Nevermore, the principal chastises her by revoking her outside privileges, which include going into town. Wednesday calls Tyler the next morning to tell him that she has reconsidered his offer of a date, but we all know that this is just an excuse for our heroine to leave the academy and continue her investigation. She then tricks Enid into sneaking out of school to relive her birthday party. They slip out, and Tyler meets them outside. Meanwhile, Xavier knocks on Wednesday and Enid's windows and discovers Thing typing on the typewriter. Thing tells him where the girls are going. Our group then proceeds into the Gates mansion, much to Enid and Tyler's surprise. Wednesday finally reveals to them that they have been duped. Tyler is disappointed because he expected them to go on a private date. Enid is disappointed because she expected them to have a girls' night out. They continue with Wednesday, however, inside the mansion. Wednesday discovers the blue Cadillac that struck the mayor at the mansion. Then, inside, she discovers a hidden altar for Joseph Crackstone, with the candles still warm. Everyone divides up to search the rumored haunted mansion. Enid then summons Wednesday, and the two investigate one bedroom that appears to be perfectly organized and tidy. The bed is made, and there are fresh flowers on the table. Wednesday discovers a music box bearing the initials LG Laurel Gates. That's the name of the file Walker was looking through earlier. Before they can continue their investigation, Enid and Wednesday hear Tyler yelling for help, warning them about the monster. The monster pursues the girls through the house, and they end up in the basement. They discover the monster's victims' trophies in the basement. These trophies are actual body parts from the murderer's victims. They don't have much time, so they leave the house and return to find Tyler. They discover him alive, but with extensive claw marks on his chest. Xavier arrives at the same time and assists them with Tyler. They then return Tyler to his home. The sheriff enters and orders the Nevermore children to leave. Wednesday then returns the sheriff to the Gates home, but everything has been cleared out. The trophies and the monster are nowhere to be found. The sheriff believes she is lying and is enraged that she has put his son's life in danger. Wednesday is not allowed to see his son again. She returns to her room and examines the music box she found in the mansion. Suddenly, a slew of photos spills from the bottom. Wednesday and her loved ones are all present. Someone with a gloved hand is seen elsewhere in the hospital unplugging Walker's ventilator while he is unconscious. The following scene depicts Mayor Walker's funeral. Whoever turned off his ventilator killed him. Wednesday observes the mourners, convinced that the murderer is right in front of her. She notices a stranger lurking in the distance. She follows the stranger into the nearby woods, where she discovers it is none other than Uncle Fester. Fester informs his niece that he requires a place to rest for a few days following a job. Wednesday accompanies him to Eugene's beehive barn. She then consults with her uncle about her current situation. Fester mentions that the creature our heroine is searching for is known as Hyde. Nathaniel Faulkner, the founder of Nevermore Academy, conducted extensive research on the monsters. Fester reveals that Faulkner kept his diary in the library of the Nightshade. Wednesday suggests they return later to retrieve it. Later that night, Wednesday goes to Nightshade's secret room. The uncle-niece team steals Faulkner's diary. Wednesday then goes through the diary. She discovers a wealth of information about Hydes. They are artists by nature, which means they are regular people. The Hyde side remains dormant until it is activated through hypnosis or chemical induction. It can also become active as a result of a traumatic event. The Hyde will inevitably form a bond with its liberator, also known as its master. Wednesday spies on Xavier the next morning, convinced he is the monster. She and Fester follow him and spy on him in the woods as he meets Dr. Kinbot. She believes Dr. Kinbot is the master and rushes to inform the principal. When Wednesday arrives at the principal's office, she is surprised to see the therapist there and decides not to inform the principal any longer. Later, Wednesday goes to the cafe and shows Tyler the diary. His father notices them but chooses to ignore them because he is too busy looking for Fester, who is apparently involved in a bank robbery. Tyler approaches Wednesday for a date after the sheriff has left and refuses to accept no for an answer. They intend to meet in the crypt of the Crackstone. Wednesday goes to the date later that night and asks Thing to stay back and watch the diary. Tyler has prepared a sweet and romantic date for Wednesday at the crypt, and she is enjoying it. Tyler expresses his desire to be more than just friends, but our goth girl attempts to talk him out of it. When Tyler gets closer to kissing, his father, the sheriff, arrives with his team. Fester is wanted by the cops. Wednesday returns to her dorm after an interrupted date to find it ransacked. This person also stole Faulkner's diary. Thing was also stabbed through the palm and affixed to the wall by the perpetrator. Wednesday rushes Thing to Uncle Fester and demands that he act. Fester practices his electrical abilities before attempting to resuscitate Thing with electroshock. Fester, thankfully, succeeds in resurrecting Thing. Wednesday requests that her uncle leave the school grounds the following day because the police are closing in. The next day, Bianca and Luca approach Wednesday and inform her that they have information on the assassination of the mayor. Lucas discovered some information on his father's laptop. He believes his father recognized Laurel and was about to reveal her identity when she murdered him. According to them, the Gates mansion was purchased by a 90-year-old heiress who died a year later. The name of her caretaker was an anagram of Laurel Gates. As a result, Laurel returned to Jericho to exact vengeance on those who had harmed her family. The parents of Wednesday, the mayor, and the coroner are prime examples of this. Wednesday believes Dr. Valerie Kinbot is the murderer. Next, she decides to confront her therapist, Dr. Kinbot, whom she believes is the master of the Hyde. The therapist is perplexed by her accusations and believes Wednesday has finally snapped. Dr. Kinbot calls the principal after Wednesday has left to complain about Wednesday's vile accusations. She hears someone in the bathroom while on the phone. When we open the door, we see the Hyde monster attack the doctor. Later, when the sheriff informs them of Dr. Kinbot's death, Principal Larissa sits with Wednesday in the hospital's waiting room. Wednesday decides to end it all by confronting Xavier in his secret art studio. She notices how detailed and accurate his drawings of the Hyde monster are. Xavier maintains his denial of the accusations. The sheriff and his team storm into the studio, having discovered the victim's belongings in Xavier's studio. They arrest Xavier after gathering evidence. Poor Xavier tells the cops over and over that he is being framed, but no one believes him. Wednesday then visits a nearby coffee shop. She finally kisses Tyler after some flirting. A powerful vision, however, knocks her to the ground. Dr. Kinbot is seen in the vision lying in a pool of blood with Tyler, who has just transformed from a raging monster to a human. He stands shirtless and bloodied over Dr. Kinbot's lifeless body. It turns out that Xavier is not guilty after all. Wednesday rushes out of the shop, paralyzed with fear, leaving Tyler perplexed as to what went wrong. That night, our heroine summons Tyler to the woods. He believes it is just another date, but Wednesday reveals him to be the Hyde monster. Tyler, of course, denies it and questions why she would meet him alone if he were the murderous creature. Surprisingly, a few Nightshades members, including Bianca and Yoko, emerge from the shadows to assist Wednesday. They take him to Xavier's art studio and chain him to the chair. Wednesday begins questioning him. Tyler's mother was a Hyde, and she believes Tyler inherited the genes from her. He claims his mother suffered from severe bipolar disorder, but she, too, was a Hyde. Tyler then emphatically denies everything. Wednesday is unmoved by his phony plea and decides to torture him, believing that a Hyde only understands pain and that torturing Tyler will set him free. Wednesday then pulls out 2 tasers, giving the other students pause. They did not agree to be tortured. When Wednesday starts shocking Tyler, others leave because they don't want to be a part of it any longer. Meanwhile, the sheriff is listening to tapes of Dr. Kinbot's sessions with Tyler. He turned out to be one of her clients as well. She explains how his mother's death left deeper psychological scars than she realized. Just then, the sheriff receives a phone call from Principal Larissa informing him of Tyler's kidnapping. Bianca and the others had rushed to inform the principal of what was going on. The sheriff and his men then storm into the art studio before Wednesday can inflict any more pain on Tyler. Tyler and Wednesday are taken to the police station. Galpin will not face kidnapping charges, according to Principal Larissa. Tyler requests to speak with Wednesday privately as she is about to leave the police station. He confesses to the crime and tells her that he was thrilled by his victim's fear every time he killed. He warns her that she has no idea what's going to happen next. As a result, the principal decides that enough is enough and dismisses Wednesday, telling her to prepare to leave the school the following afternoon. Wednesday attempts to persuade her to give her more time to prove Tyler is a Hyde. The principal refuses, stating that she is disappointed with how Wednesday turned out. Following that, Wednesday and Enid said their final farewells. She even bids Bianca and the Nightshades farewell and warns them to be prepared for what Tyler has in store for them next. Meanwhile, Miss Thornhill gives her a white oleander as a farewell gift and wishes her well. Wednesday pays a visit to Eugene, who has awoken from his coma, before leaving town. Eugene sits upright in his hospital bed, surrounded by bee-themed gifts. Our best friends from the beekeeping club have finally reunited. Wednesday claims that Dr. Kinbot set fire to the Hyde cave and that she had control over Tyler before he turned on her. However, Eugene recalls seeing someone wearing a black coat and red boots before the cave burst into flames. Wednesday quickly realizes that Miss Thornhill is the only person she has seen wearing red boots. She then returns to the school and confronts a Miss Thornhill, also known as Laurel Gates, in the conservatory. Miss Thornhill initially dismisses the accusations, but she becomes increasingly irritated by Wednesday's persistence. Wednesday informs her that Tyler has told her everything. She reveals Miss Thornhill's evil plans and how she triggered Tyler's Hyde using plant chemicals. Tyler now refers to her as his master. Meanwhile, Tyler appears from behind and observes the conflict. When confronted with Wednesday's bare facts, Miss Thornhill confesses and asks Tyler to kill Wednesday, except Tyler isn't the real one, it's Principal Larissa who has shapeshifted into the boy. To Miss Thornhill's surprise, the principal quickly transforms back. She then requests cooperation from Miss Thornhill/Laurel. Miss Thornhill, at a loss for words, injects nightshade poison into Larissa. Unfortunately, the principal, Larissa, dies moments after being poisoned. Miss Thornhill then knocks Wednesday out with a shovel. Meanwhile, Eugene video calls Enid and informs her that Miss Thornhill is the bad guy, and Wednesday and Principal Larissa go to confront her. Enid promises to look for them in the conservatory. Thing then appears and frantically informs Enid of the dire situation and Wednesday's kidnapping. Then we see the rising of a blood moon in the sky. Wednesday awakens chained to the wall in the crypt. Miss Thornhill divulges her plan to demolish the school. She intends to resurrect Crackstone by using Tyler's body parts as a hide, which she has collected from his victims. Goody not only killed Crackstone, but she also cursed his soul. Miss Thornhill hopes to use Wednesday to break the bloodlock that Goody had placed on Crackstone's tomb. Wednesday, as the living descendant of Goody, is revealed to be the key to unlocking it. Miss Thornhill has everything planned for the ritual to take place on a blood moon night. Meanwhile, the sheriff is on his way to take the falsely accused Xavier to prison. But when he receives a call from an officer informing him that Eugene's parents believe something is wrong at Nevermore, he decides to go there. Miss Thornhill returns to the crypt and cuts Wednesday's hand off the seal on Crackstone's tomb. Crackstone is awakened by the ritual, and he promises his vengeance will be swift and true. Wednesday confronts him, but he stabs her and leaves her for dead. Fortunately, Goody appears in front of her and tells her how to defeat Crackstone. She instructs her to wear the talisman necklace her mother gave her. Goody will be able to pass through Wednesday and heal her, but she will never be able to see her again. Wednesday agrees, and her ancestor heals her. Enid returns to the academy and meets Bianca and the Nightshades in the Nightshades library. Enid suggests that the Nightshades and the Sirens use their manipulative abilities to force the students to leave the school. She then offers to take Thing and look for Wednesday in the woods. Enid begins to transform into a werewolf as she rushes to save Wednesday on Blood Moon Night. Back in the woods, the sheriff changes his mind and decides to track down his son's location. He drives into the woods, leaving Xavier in his car. Thing, thankfully, frees Xavier. Wednesday rushes to stop Crackstone after being healed, but she meets Tyler on the way. He transforms into his hide monster and attacks her, but Enid transforms into her full wolf form and fights the monster. Meanwhile, Crackstone arrives at the school and immediately starts destroying everything in sight. The battle between the werewolf and the hide devolves into a bloodbath. Enid triumphs, transforming into a human just in time for Thing to find her. Tyler is discovered unconscious and naked in the leaves, covered in blood, by the sheriff. Wednesday then returns to Nevermore and equips herself with her father's sword. She is about to slash Crackstone, but he is too powerful. When Xavier arrives on the scene, he shoots an arrow at Crackstone, but the Walking Dead redirects the arrow back in his direction. Wednesday takes a step forward, taking the arrow in the shoulder. Wednesday stands up and continues to fight Crackstone. Her sword, however, snaps into several pieces. Our astute heroine recalls what Goody told her about defeating Crackstone and stabs him in the heart with a scrap of the sword. He vanishes into thin air, but the battle continues as Miss Thornhill charges in with a gun. Eugene, fortunately, makes his grand entrance with his bees and causes them to attack her. The school has been saved. Enid later reunites with the Nevermore students who are hiding out in the woods. Then she dashes over to embrace Wednesday. The Addams family butler, Lurch, is seen removing the last of Wednesday's belongings from her room in the following scene. Classes for the remainder of the semester have been cancelled. Wednesday waves goodbye to her friends before noticing Xavier lounging on the floor above her. Xavier gives her a phone and even enters his phone number into the contacts. The series concludes with Lurch driving Wednesday home. She receives a text message from an unknown sender while sitting in the back seat of the family car. They send her photos while claiming to be watching her. Meanwhile, we see an armored truck on the road, with Tyler restrained and bound inside. He abruptly awakens and begins to transform into his hide monster. Then the series ends.